Raymond had been pushing the same mop across the same marble floors for 7 years. Every single night, he walked through the grand hallways of the Harrington Conservatory of Music, cleaning up after people who never even looked at him. To them, he was just a man in a gray uniform. A nobody. Someone who emptied their trash cans and wiped down their desks. Nothing more. The conservatory was one of the most famous music schools in the country. Rich kids from wealthy families came here to learn piano, violin, and all kinds of classical instruments. Their parents paid thousands of dollars for lessons. They wore expensive clothes and carried instruments that cost more than Raymond made in a whole year. And Raymond? He made $11 an hour. Every evening, he would clock in at 6. Right when the last classes were ending. Students would walk past him in the hallways, laughing and talking about their weekend plans. Professors would nod at each other, discussing upcoming concerts and performances. But nobody nodded at Raymond. Nobody said hello. It was like he did not exist at all. He had gotten used to it over the years. At first, it hurt. He would smile at people, try to make small talk, but they would just look through him like he was made of glass. After a while, he stopped trying. He learned to keep his head down, do his job, and go home. But here is the thing about Raymond that nobody knew. He had a secret, a big one. Every night, after the building went quiet and everyone went home, Raymond would finish his cleaning rounds early. He would put away his mop and bucket, check that all the doors were locked, and then he would walk into the main auditorium. The room was huge, with red velvet seats and golden chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. It was the kind of place where famous musicians performed. The kind of place where dreams came true for people who could afford them. In the center of the stage sat a beautiful grand piano. A Steinway. It was worth more than Raymond's apartment, his car, and everything he owned put together. During the day, only the best students were allowed to touch it. Professors treated it like it was sacred. But at night, when nobody was watching, Raymond would sit down at that piano. And he would play. His fingers would move across the keys like they were born to be there. He played classical pieces that he had learned by heart. He played songs that he made up in his own head. Sometimes, he played for 10 minutes. Sometimes he played for hours. The music would fill the empty auditorium, bouncing off the walls and floating up to the ceiling. It was the most beautiful sound in the world, and nobody ever heard it except him. Raymond had learned to play when he was just 6 years old. His grandmother had been a church pianist back in their small hometown. She did not have much money, but she had an old upright piano in her living room that she loved more than anything. Every Sunday after church, she would sit little Raymond down on the bench next to her and teach him how to read music. "God gave you a gift, baby," she used to say. "Don't you ever waste it." Raymond practiced every single day. By the time he was 10, he was playing for the whole congregation. By 15, he was better than most adults. His teachers said he was special. They said he could go to a big music school someday. They said he could become a concert pianist if he worked hard enough. But life had other plans. When Raymond was 17, his father left. Just walked out one day and never came back. His mother had to work 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Raymond had 3 younger siblings who needed clothes, school supplies, and someone to look after them. So he dropped out of school and got a job at a grocery store. Then, he got a second job at a gas station. Then, a third job, doing night shifts at a warehouse. The piano became something he did not have time for anymore. Years passed. His mother got sick and needed help paying for medicine. His youngest brother got into trouble and needed bail money. His sister had a baby and needed a place to stay. Raymond took care of all of them, one crisis at a time. He never complained. He never asked for anything in return. That was just who he was. By the time he was 30, Raymond had given up on his dreams. He told himself that music was just a hobby, something he used to do when he was a kid. He told himself that real life was about paying bills and taking care of family. He told himself that people like him did not become concert pianists. That was for rich kids with rich parents, not for a man who mopped floors for a living. But late at night, when he sat at that Steinway in the empty auditorium, something happened inside him. All the years of struggle, all the sacrifices, all the things he never said out loud, they all came pouring out through his fingers. The music was not just notes on a page, it was his whole life, his pain, his hope, his sorrow, his joy. He played for his grandmother, who had passed away 5 years ago, and never got to see what he could do. He played for his mother, who was still fighting her illness in a hospital bed across town. He played for the 17-year-old kid he used to be, the one who had so many dreams before the world crushed them. Nobody knew about any of this. During the day, Raymond was invisible. Just the janitor. Just the guy who cleaned up after everyone else. But at night, alone on that stage, he became someone else entirely. He became the person he was always meant to be. There was a small window in the auditorium door, and sometimes Raymond would catch his reflection in it as he played. He saw a tired man in his late 30s, with gray starting to show in his hair. He saw worn-out hands, and a uniform that had been washed too many times. He saw someone who looked like he had given up on everything, but when he listened to the music coming from his own fingers, he heard something different. He heard possibility. He heard beauty. He heard proof that somewhere deep inside, the dream was still alive. Every night, Raymond told himself that tomorrow would be his last time playing. It was too risky. If anyone caught him touching that piano, he would lose his job for sure. And he could not afford to lose this job. Not with his mother's medical bills piling up. Not with his brother still depending on him for rent money. But every night, he came back anyway. He could not help it. The music was the only thing that made him feel like himself. The only thing that reminded him that he was more than just a mop and a bucket and a gray uniform. He had no idea that his whole life was about to change. He had no idea that someone was about to discover his secret. And he definitely had no idea that a simple question from a stranger would turn his world completely upside down. But that is exactly what happened. And it all started on a cold Tuesday night in November. When Raymond thought he was completely alone, he was not. Vivian Harrington had everything money could buy. Designer clothes, a penthouse apartment downtown, a sports car that she barely drove. Her family had founded the conservatory over 60 years ago, and their name was on buildings all over the city. She was 28 years old, and she had never worried about a bill in her entire life. But here is the thing that nobody understood about Vivian. She was lonely. Deeply, painfully lonely. It was not that people did not want to be around her. They did. Men asked her out all the time. They sent flowers to her office. They invited her to fancy dinners and weekend trips. But Vivian knew the truth. They did not want her. They wanted her last name. They wanted her family's money. They wanted to be connected to the Harrington fortune. She had dated a few of them over the years. A lawyer who spent more time talking about her inheritance than asking about her day. A businessman who proposed after 3 months, then asked her father for a job the very next week. A musician from the conservatory who wrote her love songs, then sold the story to a magazine when they broke up. After that last one, Vivian made a promise to herself. She was done with fake people. Done with men who saw her as a bank account with legs. If she was ever going to get married, it would be to someone real, someone who did not care about her money or her name, someone who could make her feel something true. And she decided there was only one way to test that. Music. Vivian had grown up surrounded by musicians. She had heard thousands of performances in her life. Technically perfect concerts where every note was in the right place. Flawless recitals where students played exactly what their teachers told them to play. But most of it left her feeling empty. It was like listening to robots. Pretty sounds with no soul behind them, but every once in a while, maybe once or twice a year, she would hear something different. A performance that made her chest tight. A melody that brought tears to her eyes for no reason. Music that felt like it was telling her a secret. Like the person playing was opening up their heart and letting her look inside. That was what she was looking for. Not perfect technique. Not fancy credentials. She wanted someone whose music could move her soul. And she told herself that if she ever found that person, she would know. She would just know. The problem was, she had been looking for years. and she was starting to think that person did not exist. On that cold Tuesday night in November, Vivian was working late in her office on the third floor of the conservatory. She was reviewing donation files and planning the annual spring gala, which was the biggest fundraising event of the year. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. By 9 o'clock, the building had gone quiet. The students had all left. The professors had gone home. Vivian figured she was the only one still there. Besides maybe the security guard at the front desk. She was just about to pack up and leave when she heard something. It was faint at first, like a whisper coming from somewhere far away. She stopped moving and listened harder. Music. Someone was playing the piano. Vivian frowned. That was strange. The practice rooms were supposed to be locked by now. Nobody should have been playing at this hour. She grabbed her coat and walked out into the hallway, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. As she got closer to the main staircase, the music got louder. It was coming from the auditorium downstairs. She recognized the piece right away. Chopin. Ballade. Number 1. In G minor. One of the most difficult piano pieces ever written. She had heard it performed dozens of times, by students, professors, even a few famous concert pianists who had visited over the years. But this was different. Vivian walked down the stairs slowly, almost afraid to make a sound. The music pulled her forward like a magnet. There was something in it that she had never heard before. Pain. Real, honest pain. Not the kind that musicians fake to impress judges at competitions. This was the sound of someone who had actually suffered, someone who had lost things. Someone who knew what it felt like to have your heart broken over and over again. By the time she reached the auditorium doors, her hands were shaking. She pushed one of the doors open, just a crack, and looked inside. The room was dark except for a single spotlight on the stage. And there, sitting at the grand Steinway piano, was a man in a gray janitor uniform. Vivian's breath caught in her throat. She knew this man. Well, she did not really know him, but she had seen him around the building for years. He was the night janitor. The one who mopped the floors and emptied the trash cans. She must have walked past him 100 times without ever really looking at him, without ever wondering who he was or what his story might be. And now here he was, playing Chopin like his life depended on it. Vivian slipped inside the auditorium and sat down in one of the back rows, staying hidden in the shadows. She did not want him to see her. She did not want the music to stop. The janitor finished the Chopin piece and paused for a moment. Vivian held her breath, hoping he would keep playing. And he did. But this time, it was not a classical piece she recognized. This was something else entirely. Something original. The melody started soft and slow, like a lullaby. But then, it built and grew, adding layers of emotion that hit Vivian like waves. She heard sadness in it. She heard struggle. She heard the kind of hope that comes from having nothing left to lose. It was like listening to someone tell their whole life story without saying a single word. Tears started rolling down Vivian's cheeks. She did not even try to stop them. She just sat there in the dark, crying silently, while a janitor played the most beautiful music she had ever heard in her life. When the final note faded into silence, Vivian did not move. She could not. She felt like she had just witnessed something sacred, something that was never meant to be seen by anyone else. The janitor sat at the piano for a long moment, his head bowed, his shoulders rising and falling with deep breaths. Then he stood up, closed the lid over the keys, and turned toward the door. That is when he saw her. Even from across the room, Vivian could see the panic on his face. His whole body went stiff. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, frozen and terrified. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The silence in the auditorium was so thick you could almost touch it. Then Vivian stood up. She wiped the tears from her face and started walking down the aisle toward the stage. Her heels clicked against the floor with each step, echoing through the empty room. The janitor watched her come closer, and she could see him bracing himself. He probably thought he was about to get fired. He probably thought she was going to yell at him for touching the piano. He probably thought his whole world was about to fall apart. He had no idea what she was actually about to say. Vivian stopped at the edge of the stage and looked up at him. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "How long have you been playing?" she asked. The janitor swallowed hard. "Since I was 6, ma'am." Vivian nodded slowly. Her mind was racing. 1,000 questions were spinning through her head. Who was this man? Where did he learn to play like that? Why was he working as a janitor when he had more talent than half the professors in this building? But she did not ask any of those questions. Not yet. Instead, she said something that surprised even herself. "Play something else." The janitor stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he sat back down at the piano. He took a deep breath, placed his fingers on the keys, and began to play again. And Vivian knew, right then and there, that she had finally found what she had been looking for. Raymond's hands were trembling as he placed them back on the piano keys. His mind was spinning with fear. This woman standing in front of him was not just anyone. She was a Harrington. Her family owned this whole building. One word from her and he would be out on the street, jobless, with no way to pay his mother's medical bills. He should apologize. He should beg her not to fire him. He should explain that he never meant any harm. That he just loved music. That he would never touch the piano again. If she let him keep his job. But she had asked him to play. And something in her eyes told him that she meant it. So Raymond took a deep breath and started playing. This time, he did not play Chopin or any other famous composer. He played something that came straight from his own heart, a piece he had been working on for years, adding to it little by little whenever life threw something new at him. He called it The Long Road Home in his head, though he had never told anyone that. He had never played it for anyone before tonight. The music started quietly, like the first light of morning creeping through a window. It was gentle and hopeful. The way Raymond remembered feeling as a little boy sitting next to his grandmother at her old piano. Back when the world seemed full of possibilities, back when he still believed that dreams could come true. Then, the melody shifted. It grew heavier, darker. This was the part that represented his teenage years. His father walking out. His mother crying in the kitchen, when she thought nobody could hear. The feeling of watching his childhood disappear overnight, replaced by responsibility and fear. Raymond played through the years of working multiple jobs. The exhaustion. The loneliness. The way people looked through him like he was not even there. He played the frustration of having so much inside him that nobody would ever see. The anger at a world that seemed designed to keep people like him down. But then something changed in the music. A new theme emerged. Fragile but persistent. Hope. Not the naive hope of a child, but something deeper, the kind of hope that survives even when everything else falls apart. The belief that somehow, someday, things might get better. The final notes hung in the air like a question without an answer. Raymond lifted his hands from the keys and sat perfectly still. His eyes closed, his chest rising and falling with each breath. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Raymond heard footsteps. He opened his eyes and saw Vivian climbing the stairs onto the stage. She walked over to the piano and stood right next to him, close enough that he could see the tears still wet on her cheeks. "What was that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Raymond shrugged, embarrassed. "Just something I made up." "You made that up?" "Yes, ma'am." Vivian shook her head slowly, like she could not believe what she had just heard. "That was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard in my life. And I have heard a lot of music." Raymond did not know what to say. Nobody had ever said anything like that to him before. He kept his eyes on the piano keys, afraid to look at her face. "What is your name?" Vivian asked. "Raymond, ma'am." "Raymond Turner." "How long have you been working here, Raymond?" 7 years. Vivian let out a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. 7 years. You have been here for 7 years, playing like this, and nobody knew? Raymond finally looked up at her. Nobody ever asked. Something shifted in Vivian's expression. Her eyes softened, and for a moment she looked almost sad. Like she was seeing something that hurt her deep inside. "Who taught you to play like that?" she asked. "My grandmother. She played piano at our church back home. She passed away a few years ago." "And the piece you just played? The original one?" Raymond hesitated. It felt strange to talk about something so personal with a stranger. But there was something about this woman that made him want to be honest. "It is my life," he said quietly. "Everything that happened to me. My father leaving. My mother getting sick. Working 3 jobs just to keep everyone fed. All of it. I put it all in the music because I did not know what else to do with it." Vivian was quiet for a long time. She walked over to the edge of the stage and looked out at the empty auditorium. All those red velvet seats. All those golden chandeliers. A room built for people with money and connections and fancy degrees. People who were nothing like Raymond. When she turned back around, there was a strange look in her eyes. Determined, almost fierce. "I have a question for you," she said. "And I need you to answer honestly." Raymond nodded, his heart pounding. "If you had the chance to play in front of an audience, a real audience, would you do it?" The question hit Raymond like a punch to the chest. Play in front of people? Real people? The thought terrified him. He had not performed publicly since he was a teenager. The idea of standing on this stage with hundreds of eyes watching him made his stomach turn. But somewhere deep inside, buried under years of doubt and fear, a small voice whispered yes. "I do not know," Raymond said honestly. "It has been so long. I am not sure I could." Vivian walked back over to him and looked him straight in the eyes. "We have a spring gala coming up in 3 months. It is the biggest event of the year. The most important people in the city will be there. Donors, professors, famous musicians, everyone." Raymond felt his throat go dry. He had cleaned up after the spring gala every year since he started working here. He knew exactly how fancy it was. How important. "I want you to perform at the gala," Vivian said. Raymond almost laughed. "Ma'am, with all respect, that is crazy. I am a janitor. I mop floors. Those people would never want to hear someone like me play." "Those people do not know what they want," Vivian shot back. "They sit through boring performances every year and clap politely, because that is what they are supposed to do. But you? What you just played? That would wake them up. That would make them feel something real for the first time in their lives." Raymond shook his head. "I cannot. I am sorry. I just cannot." Vivian stepped closer. So close that Raymond could smell her perfume, something soft and expensive that he could never afford. "Let me make you a deal," she said. "If you can play at the spring gala, if you can get up on that stage and show everyone what you just showed me, I will marry you." Raymond stared at her. He was sure he had heard wrong. "Excuse me? You heard me. Ma'am, you do not even know me." "I know enough." Vivian's voice was steady, certain. "I have spent my whole life surrounded by fake people. People who smile to my face and lie behind my back. People who only care about my family's money. But you are real. What you play is real. And that is worth more to me than anything else in this world." Raymond stood up from the piano bench, his legs shaky. "This is insane. You are a Harrington. I am nobody. I clean toilets for a living. I do not care about any of that. Your family would never allow it. My family does not get to decide who I love." The word hit Raymond like lightning. Love. She had said love. This woman he had just met, this billionaire heiress who could have anyone in the world, had just used the word love while talking about him. "You are serious," Raymond said. It was not a question. "I have never been more serious about anything in my life." Raymond turned away and walked to the edge of the stage. He looked out at the empty seats, trying to imagine them filled with people. Rich people. Important people. People who had never given him a second glance. Could he really do this? Could he really stand up there and play for them? And even if he could, did he actually believe that this woman would keep her promise? He turned back to face Vivian. She was watching him with those intense eyes, waiting for his answer. 3 months? He asked. 3 months. Raymond took a deep breath. His grandmother's voice echoed in his head. God gave you a gift, baby. Do not ever waste it. Okay, he said. I will do it. Vivian smiled. It was the first real smile Raymond had ever seen on her face. And in that moment, standing on the stage of a concert hall he had cleaned 1,000 times, Raymond felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. The next 3 months changed everything for Raymond. It started the very next day. Vivian met him at the conservatory before his shift and handed him a key. A small silver key that looked brand new. What is this? Raymond asked. It opens the private practice room on the 4th floor, Vivian said. Nobody uses it anymore. It has a piano, good acoustics, and most importantly, privacy. You can practice there whenever you want. Raymond turned the key over in his hand. He had walked past that room 100 times while cleaning, but he had never been inside. It was always locked. Reserved for special guests, he had assumed. I cannot accept this, he said. You are not accepting anything. You are preparing for a performance. There is a difference. Raymond wanted to argue, but Vivian was already walking away. She stopped at the door and looked back at him. Same time tomorrow. I want to hear what you are working on. And just like that, she was gone. That first week was awkward. Raymond would show up at the practice room after his shift ended, and Vivian would be there waiting for him. She would sit in the corner while he played, never interrupting, never criticizing, just listening. At first, Raymond could barely get through a single piece without stopping. His hands would shake. His mind would go blank. Every time he made a mistake, he would apologize and start over. Stop saying sorry, Vivian told him one night. You are not performing for a judge. You are just playing. I know. It is just hard when someone is watching. Then pretend I am not here, Raymond tried. But it was impossible to pretend she was not there. Her presence filled the room. He was aware of her, every breath, every small movement. It made him nervous in ways he could not explain, but as the days turned into weeks, something started to shift. Raymond began to relax. He stopped apologizing for every wrong note. He started playing longer pieces, more complicated pieces, pieces he had been afraid to try for years, and somewhere along the way, they started talking. It began with small things. Vivian asked about his family. Raymond told her about his mother, how she was fighting her illness one day at a time. He told her about his brother, who was finally getting his life together after years of making bad choices. He told her about his sister and her little girl, who called him Uncle Ray and thought he was a superhero because he could fix anything. Vivian listened to all of it. She never interrupted. She never judged. She just sat there and let him talk, like his words actually mattered to her. Then one night, she started sharing too. She told Raymond about growing up in a mansion that always felt empty, about parents who were too busy with their careers to notice her, about being sent to boarding schools and summer camps because nobody wanted to deal with her at home. Everyone thinks being rich is easy, she said, and in a lot of ways, it is. I never worried about food or rent or any of that. But money cannot buy you parents who actually care. It cannot buy you real friends. It cannot buy you someone who loves you for who you are, instead of what you have. Raymond did not know what to say. He had spent his whole life thinking that rich people had it made, that they floated through life without any real problems. But sitting here with Vivian, listening to the sadness in her voice, he realized that pain did not care about bank accounts. Loneliness did not check your net worth before it moved in. I am sorry, he said finally. That sounds really hard. Vivian smiled, but it was a tired smile. It was. It still is, sometimes. But I am learning to build my own life now. On my own terms. After that night, things were different between them. The walls came down. They started meeting earlier, staying later. Sometimes they would talk for hours before Raymond even touched the piano. He learned that Vivian loved old movies and hated sushi. That she had wanted to be a veterinarian when she was little, but her parents said it was not a proper career for a Harrington. That she volunteered at an animal shelter on weekends and had been secretly feeding a stray cat that lived behind the conservatory. And Vivian learned about Raymond too. About his grandmother and the old church piano. about the songs he used to write as a teenager. Love songs for girls who never knew he existed. About the night his father left and how Raymond had sat at the piano until sunrise, playing the same sad melody over and over because it was the only way he knew how to cry. They were falling for each other. Neither of them said it out loud, but they both knew. It was in the way their eyes met when Raymond finished a piece, in the way their hands brushed when Vivian handed him a cup of coffee, in the way they found excuses to stay just a little longer, even when they both should have gone home. But as the spring gala got closer, Raymond's fear started growing too. One night, about 2 weeks before the event, he sat down at the piano and could not play a single note. His hands just froze. He sat there staring at the keys, his heart racing, sweat forming on his forehead. "What is wrong?" Vivian asked. "I cannot do this." "Yes, you can." "No." Raymond stood up and walked to the window. The city lights sparkled below, beautiful and distant. "You do not understand. Those people at the gala, they are going to take one look at me and laugh. The janitor who thinks he can play with the masters. It is going to be humiliating." Vivian walked over and stood beside him. "You think I would set you up to be humiliated? I think you believe in me more than you should." "Raymond, look at me." He turned to face her. She reached up and placed her hand on his cheek. Her touch was warm and soft, and it made his heart ache in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "I have heard every pianist who has ever walked through these doors," she said. "Students, professors, Grammy winners, legends. And not one of them has ever made me feel what you make me feel when you play. Not even close. What if I freeze up there? What if I forget everything?" "Then you forget, and you start again. And nobody will care because the moment you touch those keys, they will be too busy crying to notice anything else." Raymond wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that everything would work out, that he would get up on that stage and play the performance of his life. But the doubt was so heavy. Years of being invisible, being overlooked, being told he was not good enough. It does not just disappear because someone believes in you. Vivian seemed to read his mind. She stepped closer and looked him straight in the eyes. "You have spent your whole life playing for an empty room," she said. "Playing for nobody because you thought nobody would ever want to listen. But I want to listen. And there are hundreds of people out there who need to hear what you have to say. They just do not know it yet." She took his hand and led him back to the piano. "One more time," she said. "Play it one more time. Not for the gala. Not for the audience. Just for me." Raymond sat down slowly. He placed his fingers on the keys, and he thought about everything that had happened in the past few months. Meeting Vivian. Opening up to her, falling in love with her, even though he had never said the words. Then he started to play. The music poured out of him like a river breaking through a dam. All his fear, all his doubt, all his hope, it all came out through his fingers. And when he finished, he looked up at Vivian and saw tears streaming down her face. "That," she whispered, "that is what you are going to give them." Raymond nodded slowly. For the first time, he actually believed it. The night of the spring gala was 12 days away, and Raymond was finally ready to show the world who he really was. The night of the spring gala arrived faster than Raymond expected. He stood backstage in a simple black suit that Vivian had bought for him. It was the nicest piece of clothing he had ever worn in his life. The fabric was soft, the fit was perfect, and when he looked in the mirror, he almost did not recognize himself. But his hands were shaking, his mouth was dry, and his heart was beating so hard he thought it might burst right out of his chest. Through the curtain, he could hear the sounds of the gala. Glasses clinking, people laughing, the low hum of conversations between the richest and most powerful people in the city. These were the same people who had walked past him for 7 years without ever seeing him. The same people whose trash he emptied and whose floors he mopped. In a few minutes, he was going to walk out there and play for them. The thought made him feel sick. "Hey." Raymond turned around. Vivian was standing behind him in a beautiful dark blue dress. Her hair was done up fancy, and she was wearing earrings that probably cost more than his car. She looked like a princess from a movie, but her eyes were soft and warm. The same eyes that had watched him play in that empty practice room, night after night. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Terrified," Raymond admitted. Vivian smiled and walked closer. She reached out and straightened his tie, even though it did not need straightening. "Good," she said. "That means you care. What if I mess up?" "You will not. But what if I do?" Vivian looked up at him. "Then you will keep playing. Because that is what you do, Raymond. You keep going. No matter what life throws at you, you keep going. That is who you are." Raymond felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to say something, but the words would not come. So he just nodded. Vivian glanced toward the stage. "I have to go introduce you. Are you ready?" "No." She laughed softly. "Good answer. The best performances always come from people who are not ready." She squeezed his hand one last time, then turned and walked toward the stage. Raymond watched her go, his heart aching with something he could not quite name. A minute later, he heard her voice through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight. The Harrington Conservatory has always been dedicated to discovering extraordinary talent. Tonight, I am honored to introduce a very special performer, someone whose music has touched me in ways I cannot begin to describe. Please welcome our mystery guest to the stage." The audience applauded politely. Raymond could tell they were curious but skeptical. A mystery guest at the spring gala? That was unusual. People were probably expecting some famous pianist or a celebrity of some kind. Instead, they were going to get a janitor. Raymond took a deep breath. He thought about his grandmother, sitting at her old piano in that tiny church. He thought about his mother, fighting her illness in a hospital bed. He thought about all the years he had spent being invisible, being overlooked, being told that people like him did not get to have dreams. Then he walked out onto the stage. The spotlight hit him immediately, bright and blinding. He could not see the audience, but he could feel them. Hundreds of eyes staring at him, trying to figure out who he was. He heard the whispers start. A few people in the front rows recognized him. He saw their confused expressions. Is that the janitor? What is he doing up there? Raymond walked to the piano and sat down on the bench. His hands were still trembling. He placed them on the keys and took one more deep breath. Then he began to play. The first few notes were soft, almost hesitant. But as the melody grew, something inside Raymond let go. All the fear, all the doubt, all the years of hiding, it melted away. He was not a janitor anymore. He was not invisible. He was just a man sitting at a piano, telling his story the only way he knew how. He played the piece he had written for Vivian, the one he called The Long Road Home. He played his grandmother teaching him piano on Sunday afternoons. He played his father walking out the door and never coming back. He played the exhaustion of working 3 jobs and the loneliness of feeling like nobody would ever truly see him. And then he played the hope, the small, stubborn flame that had never gone out, no matter how hard life tried to put it out. He played meeting Vivian. He played falling in love. He played the feeling of finally being seen by someone who actually cared. The music filled the auditorium. It bounced off the walls and floated up to the golden chandeliers. It wrapped around every person in that room and squeezed their hearts until they could barely breathe. Raymond did not look at the audience. He did not need to. He could feel them leaning forward in their seats. He could hear the silence, so deep and complete that you could have heard a pin drop. He could sense the tears falling on fancy dresses and expensive suits. When he played the final note, he held it for a long moment. Then he lifted his hands from the keys and let the silence hang in the air. For one terrifying second, nothing happened. Then the room exploded. People jumped to their feet. They clapped so hard their hands must have hurt. Some of them were crying openly, not even trying to hide it. Raymond heard someone shout, "Bravo!" from the back of the room. Then more voices joined in. "Bravo! Bravo!" Raymond sat at the piano, overwhelmed. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but he never thought it would actually happen. He never thought people would actually stand up for him, for the janitor who mopped their floors. Then Vivian walked back onto the stage. The applause started to quiet down as people watched her approach the piano. She was smiling, but there were tears on her cheeks too. She reached out her hand, and Raymond took it. He stood up and faced the audience with her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vivian said, her voice clear and strong. "The man standing next to me is named Raymond Turner. For the past 7 years, he has worked as a janitor at this conservatory. He has cleaned our floors, emptied our trash, and taken care of this building while most of us never even bothered to learn his name." The audience was dead silent now. Raymond could feel their shock, their confusion. "But tonight," Vivian continued, "you heard what he can do. You felt what he can make you feel. And I want you to know that this man, this janitor, has more talent, more heart, and more soul than anyone I have ever met in my entire life." She turned to face Raymond, still holding his hand. "3 months ago, I made Raymond a promise. I told him that if he could play at this gala, if he could show all of you what he showed me, I would marry him." Gasps rippled through the audience. Raymond saw mouths fall open. He saw people grab each other's arms in disbelief. Vivian looked into his eyes. "Raymond Turner, I am a woman of my word. And even if I had not made that promise, I would still be standing here right now, asking you to spend the rest of your life with me. Because I love you. I love your music. I love your heart. I love everything about you." Raymond felt tears spilling down his own cheeks now. He did not try to stop them. He did not care who was watching. "I love you too," he said. His voice cracked, but he did not care about that either. Vivian smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Raymond had ever seen. The audience erupted again. Camera flashes went off everywhere. People were cheering, crying, hugging each other. It was chaos in the best possible way, but Raymond did not notice any of it. He only saw Vivian. He only felt her hand in his. He only knew that somehow, against all odds, his life had changed forever. 1 year later, Raymond and Vivian got married in a small ceremony at the conservatory. Raymond's mother was there, healthy enough to walk him down the aisle. His brother was there, sober and proud. His sister was there with her little girl, who threw flower petals and giggled the whole time. Raymond became the conservatory's artist in residence. He taught piano to students who reminded him of himself, kids from tough backgrounds who had talent but no opportunities. He started a scholarship fund in his grandmother's name, so that no child would ever have to give up on music because of money. And every night, after the building went quiet, Raymond would sit at the grand Steinway piano in the main auditorium. But he was not alone anymore. Vivian would sit beside him, her head on his shoulder, listening as he played. He was not invisible anymore. He never would be again. Sometimes, the longest roads lead us exactly where we are meant to be. And sometimes, the person who changes your life forever is someone you walked past 100 times without ever really seeing. All it takes is one moment, one chance, one person willing to listen, and everything changes.